Welcome back everyone. Today in this video we'll be discussing about respiration in human beings. We know the process by which energy is released from food in our body is called respiration, and carbon dioxide and water are two waste products produced in this process. The respiration process in human beings basically takes place in cells of our body, and this function includes breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide. The breathing mechanism in human beings is done by two respiratory organs that are called lungs. So when we take in oxygen, then this is called inhalation, and when we give out carbon dioxide, then this is called exhalation. And this inhalation and exhalation completes the breathing process. And one breathing means one inhalation and one exhalation. So when we inhale oxygen, then this oxygen is used by our body to release energy by breaking down the food, and hence the waste product carbon dioxide is also produced, and this is released by the process of breathing out. Breathing involves the movement of ribcage and diaphragm. Now what is ribcage and what is diaphragm? You will get to know about this within a short while. The first phase of breathing is breathing in, that means inhaling oxygen, and the second phase of breathing is breathing out, that means exhaling carbon dioxide. Ribcage is present in our chest, and it is a cage-like structure which protects our internal organs such as our heart and two lungs. Now when the muscles between the ribcage contracts, then this ribcage moves upward and outward. You can see here the muscles are contracting and the ribcage is moving upward and outward. In the same time, the diaphragm contracts and moves downward. You can see here the diaphragm is contracting and moving downward. So together, the upward and outward movement of ribcage along with the downward movement of diaphragm increases the space in the chest cavity and makes the chest cavity larger. Now, as the chest cavity becomes larger, then we can suck the air outside from the atmosphere into our lungs very easily. And in the breathing out process, it happens in the opposite way. So when you breathe out, then the muscles between the rib cage relax and the rib cage move downward and inward. You can see here the rib cage is moving downward and inward, and in the same time the diaphragm relaxes and moves upward. You can see here the diaphragm is also moving upward, and together this downward and inward movement of rib cage as well as the upward movement of diaphragm both decrease the space in our chest cavity and makes the chest cavity smaller. Now as the chest cavity becomes smaller, then air is pushed out from our lungs by breathing out. You can clearly see when in the first case we inhaled air inside our chest, then the chest becomes bigger, and when in the second case we exhale the carbon dioxide, then the chest becomes smaller. So this is basically the breathing mechanism consisting of two phases. Phase 1 breathing in and phase 2 breathing out. Now we'll move towards the main discussion of this video, that is respiration in human beings. In human beings, many organs take part in the process of respiration, and together we call them respiratory system. The main organs of human respiratory system are nose, the nasal cavity, trachea, bronchi, lungs and diaphragm. So this is our nose, which further continues with a passage called nasal cavity. Then we have our trachea or windpipe, which further divided into two parts, and these two parts of windpipe are connected with our two lungs. You can see our two lungs present in the chest cavity. The part of throat between the mouth and windpipe is called pharynx, and from the nasal passage air enters into the pharynx first, then it goes into the windpipe or trachea. the upper end of trachea has a voyage box called larynx. Then the trachea runs down the neck and divides into two smaller tubes called bronchi. In singular, bronchi are called bronchus. And these two bronchus are connected to the lungs. And all the organs of our respiratory system, that means lungs, the windpipe or bronchus, everything is separated by diaphragm. Diaphragm is basically a sheet of muscle. This diaphragm separates the respiratory system from the abdominal system or stomach. Then each of two bronchus divides into some branches, and these branches are called bronchioles. And the smallest bronchioles have some tiny air sacs into their edges. These air sacs are called alveoli. And these alveoli are surrounded by lots of blood capillaries. Each and every alveoli or air sac is surrounded by thin blood capillaries. You can see here the alveoli are surrounded by lots of thin blood capillaries. It is in the alveoli that the gaseous exchange takes place. That means the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place in this particular alveoli or air sacs. There are millions of tiny alveoli present in our lungs. So basically what happens when we inhale the oxygen, it enters into the nasal passage. Then it follows the windpipe and goes into the edges of the alveoli, and as the alveoli are surrounded by lots of blood capillaries, so this blood capillaries takes the oxygen to each and every cells of our body, and inside these cells the respiration process occurs. That means by combining with the digested food, they release the energy, and as a waste product it produces the carbon dioxide gas, and this carbon dioxide is again bring back to the alveoli by the blood capillaries. Then from the alveoli it follows the windpipe, then nasal cavity, and at last we breathe this carbon dioxide out with our nostrils, and thus the respiration or respiratory system completes in our human body. You can see here it is written the alveoli are surrounded by very thin blood vessels called capillaries. So when oxygen of air diffuses out from the alveoli walls into the blood, then this oxygen is carried by the blood to all the parts of our body, and as the blood passes through the tissues of the body, that means each and every cells of the body, then this oxygen combines with the digested food, then breaks down the food and releases energy. That means completes the respiration process, and as a waste product carbon dioxide is produced in this process. Then carbon dioxide diffuses into the blood again, then this blood carries the carbon dioxide again into the alveoli, and from that we breathe it out and completes the respiration process. So this is the end of the video. On next video we will be discussing about our third life process, that is transport or circulation. Till then, stay home, stay safe.